All right. So I wanted to start out by answering a question. What is an SSP? What is it? Why is it important? Why do we need it? Can anybody see my screen? Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it are you seeing the Lionfish portal?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great. Okay, so the SSP is a document that is a short summary of all of your controls that you have with your particular framework that you have to have on hand to submit to auditors, the government, your contractors, your vendors, sometimes your vendors. That shows it's a brief summary of all your controls. So it doesn't have everything in super detail. Those would be more of each of the control listed items, but you're going to just basically explain in each of the controls what it is that what you're doing to become compliant. Now, what are the controls? The controls are these items here. If you're going for CMMC, for instance. So the list of controls is available, like, and you would meet these controls. And when you met the controls, you would describe briefly how you did it. So we'll go over that when we look at the SSP document in depth. What it is that Lionfish does here is that it keeps track of all these items for you. It's very difficult to keep track of all the items on like an Excel spreadsheet or in a SharePoint or just like in a document folder. It's very difficult to keep track of all of the different controls because you need to have something called artifacts or evidence for each of the controls. So if you have artifacts, evidence, you have to have two now for each of them. According to CMMC, you only had to one or more for NIST 800-171. But now you need two pieces of evidence. You need to explain, possibly in a policy, what it is that you're doing to meet the control, and then you have the ability to keep all that stuff in one location. Now, there's also the fact that you have to have what's called a poem, and a poem can feed off of your SSP. The poem is a plan of action of what you're going to do to complete the control. So if you don't have the control completed, you need to accompany the SSP with a poem. Now, where do you get the SSP document? You can download it off the internet. There's no standard SSP document. Lionfish itself has an SSP document. Once you sign up for this, you get access to it and the poem. You can download. We're going to use their template. We're just going to look at it when we do this, when we go through the SSP document. So again, the SSP document is a brief summary of all of your controls. It's going to tell a auditor or a company like the DoD or Lockheed Martin or Boeing how you've met your controls with a brief summary. You don't have to go into super detail and explain exactly step by step how you do everything. You're just going to really need to briefly describe it. So Lionfish helps you organize yourself. It's very difficult because there's 101, 110 controls or more in some scenarios. If you're going for higher CMMC levels, there might be more controls for you to meet. And to keep track of all that stuff and to keep it all in one location, to keep all the artifacts, and then to keep your plan of action moving forward where you have it in a basis, a task list basis, you're going to want to use a platform like Lionfish. If you don't, you're really putting a tremendous burden upon yourself to stay completely organized with like an Excel spreadsheet. So I suggest you get a tool. Lionfish is perfect for that. So let's go over what this SSP is, and we'll look at what it is we need to do to create the SSP. The first thing we need to do is observe change control. So change control is a methodology where you Keep track of versions, when things were changed, who changed them, what changes were made. If you can even add if it was approved by a board meeting, but this is a basic change control item. So it should be actually at the top of all of your documents. All of your policies and procedures from this point forward should have a change control section in it. And also some of the following information that I'm going to go over, it should have as well, but not necessarily in every single one. I'll point out which ones it needs. But this particular SSP document, which you can get from Lionfish, is 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 a template, and there are more out there. You can ask other companies for them, they'll give them to you. So this is a table of contents, which we're going to go over. And then it's the system identification. What the system is, your company. It is what you know, it's what how you identify yourself. There are contract numbers, cage codes. If you're familiar with what a cage code is, you have to go through the SAM to get a cage code. A cage code it identifies you as a vendor of the government if you need to do GSA and other things like that. So here's one of the other things that I would include on all of my change control documents, and that is responsible organization and or responsible person, information owner. These two things are really critical for all of your documents. You want to include these two pieces of information on every single document you have. You can have it at the top or the bottom. But in this document, it goes a little bit more in depth into who owns what and why. And so what will happen is you'll need to fill out this part here where you type in your organization name and the information owner, your point of contact with the government, and or your address and mobile phone number. System owner is who's in charge of your equipment. Your information owner, it could be information officer like a CIO or CISO. Your system owner is usually your IT person or your system administrator. Again, they could be the same person if you have a smaller organization, but if not, you would differentiate them. And then they're also going to go into a system security officer if you have a CISO or a VP of security, or someone who you've identified as your security officer. You're going to want to point that out to them in this document and keep it updated as you go, because they're gonna look for this particular information to be current and accurate. And I wouldn't include the system owner and system security officer and human resources person on all of your document control stuff, but definitely on this document they need it. But on your regular change control data for all of your documents, you're going to want to include this data. And then you want somebody to sign off on the document. This is normal. Just have them sign off on the document. And when you review the document, when you change the document, update it, you want to have signatures of your company and company information. General description and purpose of the system. You put your cage code in here. If you have a particular contract that you're creating this SSP for, you would want to put it in there. And this is really, if somebody sends you an SSP, you're going to want to identify the contract that they've asked you to fill out your SSP for. You can have all this information and just change the contract descriptions and as they come in for each of the different contracts that people ask you SSPs for. You're going to want to fill out the end user, administrator, and the number of privileged users. While working through your CMMC, you're going to have to create these groups anyway and identify who it is that has system access, what the privileged administrators, privileged users, so on and so forth. So you should have this data already based on the first sets of CMMC questions that you get. All right, general description of information. This is the types of processed data that you've documented in your system, where you keep it, where it is in your information set. So you're going to want to possibly say you store this in your file server infrastructure, your SharePoint server, your or Lionfish, or wherever you keep your data. You want to identify where it's stored and where it's transmitted to as a, you could put a workflow in here, or you could just list them out. Okay, so you're going to want to describe your system environment. You're going to basically want to give like a network map. If you're not familiar with a network map, it basically just has like your internet, your firewall, your server infrastructure, your switches, and your desktops, your possibly your printers, and other peripheral devices like network attached storage. You're going to want to lay all this out in a network architecture document. So you want to include that in here. It's just going to be a workflow. If you have Visio or even some PowerPoint and even Word, it'll allow you to create network maps or topologies. It doesn't have to have like IP addresses and names and but it should have like locations, cities, that fact that you have servers behind firewalls. If you have a Tampa location, you want to put Tampa firewall, you want to put Tampa server behind it, Tampa workstations, but you don't necessarily have to get super duper deep on all the information, but you do want to identify if they're virtual servers, physical servers, firewalls, routers, like it says here, copiers, lab equipment, etc. So I would put a network map in here, and you just drop it in, you paste it as a picture, and you should have that'll meet this part of the requirement. Okay, an asset inventory. So part of your CMMC is that you took an inventory of all your equipment, all your software, all that you've done already. So you're just going to drop that information into here. Your inventory can be done by your RMM tool or something like Spiceworks, or there's warranty.com or whatever. You've scanned your network, you've gotten all of your information, you will have all of your data in that. You could just drop that in here as well. This is just a template for type quantity manufacturer model. It asks for more information above, like version, service pack, what operating system you have. You could just remove this hardware inventory, drop in, and put in your own inventory into this section here. So this inventory is as it's needed to be updated, you can update it. Do you need to update your inventory this document every single time you get a new computer? No, you should do like a regular audit of your environment. And when you do, you just put your inventory document that's been updated in here. How often should you modify your SSP? I would do this once every quarter. But if you have to give an accurate SSP to someone like the Army or the Marines or whatever, and they ask you for this, I would update my SSP before I sent it over to them, just so that they had the most current information, most accurate information. But they're looking for the fact that you keep a standard baseline, which is again another CMMC control. You want to keep a baseline and have that be part of your infrastructure. Your software inventory. So part of your CMMC is going to be that you control the type of software that is in your infrastructure, what can be installed, what can be what can be put in your different particular type of network. So you're going to keep track of what those software versions are. You're going to keep control of what machines they can be installed on. You're going to also keep control of who can install them, when they can be installed, and you're going to monitor the fact that they're installed on all your computers, either through your RMM tool, your remote monitoring management tool, or you're going to be doing this through like an MDM, mobile device management tool, or Intune or something like that, where you'll have the ability to see all the different software loaded on all of your different computers. And then you're going to also want to make sure you keep the version and all that under the same number and area, as well as your operating systems. You want to try to keep everything based. Again, one of your CMMC controls is that you keep a baseline of all of your products and you want to make sure you stick to that baseline. Now you're going to ask, well, what if I have BYOD? What if I let people bring their own equipment? How do I ensure baseline? Well, your baseline should be for BYOD should be at a certain level. You have to have antivirus. You have to have Windows Professional Edition. You have to have at least Windows 10 or Windows 11. You have to have minimums. You can put minimums in your baseline for guest users and BYOD users. But one of those will have to be like encryption and all that other and antivirus and stuff like that. And you want to lay out all the applications and hardware and software that you maintain and own. Okay, so when you create your when you start doing your CMMC, you're going to basically want to do like an audit of your environment. And that audit is going to be like what you basically come up with as a security plan or a security policy. And your security plan and your security policy is an overview of all the things you do in your environment that, like I have a mobile device policy, I have a password policy, I have, you know, uh, I have different multi-factor authentication. You go through and you describe in your security policy, which you'll be taking basically a summary and describing it here, all the things you do. You also want to describe the things that you don't do, and how you would deal with them if you did have them. So if you, in the old days, try to do an SPRSS, which is your score, out of 110 and you were not perfect, you were not 110, it might be because some of the requirements of CMMC or NIST 800-171 are impossible for you to meet. Like if it says, how do you transport data between one location and another, between point A and point B, you're like, well, I don't do that. But you want to create a document that says that if you did do it, here are the requirements you would meet in order to do that, in order to meet those particular controls. So even if you don't have the control or the requirements of the control, you still want to try to meet it by putting in what you would do and how you would implement it, or what you would do in lieu of what was required. So you definitely want to try to answer all of the requirements. Don't just think that, oh, this particular requirement has nothing to do with me. Therefore, I don't need to fill it. You should also put in your security policy or your security document, what you would do in the event that you needed to meet that. And so you would summarize all that here in the security requirements section. It's just really a high-level description of all the things that you do in your infrastructure. So here is one of the codes that or one of the first parts of this that you need to do. You will have each of your controls. CMMC has different levels of controls. NIST 800-171 has a number of controls. And here's what you want to do. You want to put in the code for the particular control, and then you want to describe the control, and you want to make sure that you mark down what was done, and then you want to describe how you've done it. So your description of control is where I've seen them kick back the SSP. So if your description is not thorough enough, they will kick it back, or they'll ask you to elaborate on it more. What I would do in this scenario is I would describe it as well as I could, but you definitely don't have to dig deep. You don't have to go, I use Active Directory schema 11.0. But you should say, look, I have a Windows environment. I have an Active Directory server. I have a backup Active Directory server. On that Active Directory server, I have, groups, users, admin groups, permissions. Describe it thoroughly. You should describe all of your controls thoroughly. Now, again, what if I don't meet the control? What if I don't, and what if I'm not going to be able to do it? Like, it's going to ask me, when you transport information physically, and you're like, well, I can't complete that control. You can just put in what you would do in the event that you needed to do that, what your policy and your procedure would be in the event that you needed to move data. If you did, then you would say, if I had to move data, I would then use this particular process and we would follow this as a guideline. And then even if you can even have a policy that says transportation of data, which means that you want to meet these, because a lot of companies, when they do audits, they're going to add them all up. And if there's some that are not implemented, they're going to come back to you and say, well, what's your POAM for this? Your plan of action. And you're going to be like, well, I don't do that. They're going to, well, you're not going to score high enough. You're not going to get 100% or 100 out of 110, which won't allow you to like get gold or silver or whatever status with that company. So you want to create a policy that says, here is what I would do in the event that I'm not going to meet this control. So if you don't have these controls, even in the process of being done, you want to create your POAM. Now, again, the POAM is available through Lionfish website. You can also go and find one and download it. It's just an Excel spreadsheet, which basically says what it is that you need to do, which code you need to meet, what your estimated time of meeting it is, what is there an approver, is there mitigating tasks, that kind of thing. So it's basically like a mini project plan that shows the customer what, or shows the vendor or end user or Department of Defense or whatever that you're working on it, and they'll take that into consideration when they are going to approve your contract. But if you have met all those policies and processes and procedures, you're going to want to put that data in here briefly. This description of how you meet the control or how the control is implemented is the most critical part. Everything else is just rote, did you implement? But this part here, it could be, I would put at least 3 or 4 sentences in here. I wouldn't put 1 or 2 sentences. I wouldn't be super vague. I would definitely put as many sentences in here that can describe what you're doing as possible. And then you would go through each of these controls one at a time for whatever it is that you need to have it for, and ensure that you are describing how you implement each of the controls. So I've described to you how to meet the control. I've described to you how to meet it if you don't have that, if it's not applicable to you. And then I've described to you how much information you need to put in here and what kind of information you need to put into each of these. This is the bread and butter of the SSP, because if you don't have these controls laid out perfectly or described correctly, they're going to kick it back to you, and then you'll just have to really go back and have meetings and describe exactly what you're doing, in the sense that you need to fill it out more and be more descriptive of what's happening. So once you fill out all of these and you have your POAM, if you don't have the ability to complete some of these tasks, then you'll have a completed SSP. Now, once you're completing your SSP, you want to have the group sign off on it. You want to have everybody, give the signature, which was above. That's what this is for each of these controls. There's 110 or more of these. So it's going to take quite a bit of time. It'll take literally, I think it took me 28 hours when I was working on it continuously. So it'll take at least 3 or 4 days of full-time days worth of time to fill these out, because you have to look at the controls that you have and then kind of summarize each of them. So not only have you done the work where you built out your whole CMMC practice, but now you have to summarize it, and it's a different. So if you're just cutting and pasting policies in here, that's a lot of data that they definitely don't need to see, because you're just giving a brief summary of what you've done to meet the control. So again, don't copy and paste your policies in here, but also you're going to need to take the time to describe how you've met each of those particular controls. And then you're going to, keep this, and then you're going to maintain it. And maintaining this means that every quarter you have a meeting with your group, which was described above, your systems owner, your systems policy, and you're gonna have a change control meeting, or you're gonna have a board meeting, or you're gonna have a security meeting. And in that meeting, you're going to review any of the changes that you've made, any additions that you've done, and then maybe update the descriptions of each of these. So you're going to want to also document that meeting. The fact that you have that meeting is critical, and some auditors ask for those meeting minutes and the meeting notes. So even if you're alone, if say you're a single person and you don't have a large company, you still have to have a meeting, make meeting minutes and describe in it what what you're considering, and then modify your SSP, and then save it again in your secure document location. So I'm gonna go to the chat to see what we got here. In an MSP situation, should that point of contact be external? Yeah, your technical contact can be external. Your technical contact can be whoever you want it to be. It's okay. You can have your security officer be a third party. I'm the security officer for many companies, so yeah, that's not a problem. Will this document be available? Yes. If you sign up or you can go and get this document from Lionfish. They'll share it with you. They also have, like I said, they also have the POAM, and you're going to want to observe that as well. Even if your POAM is blank, which it never will be, because if you have a POAM, you're going to be putting in there that you're going to be doing system upgrades, system updates, that you're going to be modifying your baseline, that you're going to be having, even if that you're going to be having a meeting about reviewing your documentation. So I would put that in my POAM and put a date on it and owner, and then when it's complete, I would mark it as complete. There's nothing better the auditors love than massive amounts of documentation and and tracking. Um, I wouldn't. I mean, putting the IP addresses. This question is any specific reason for this suggestion? Not necessarily include IP addresses and bandwidth of connection in a network topology diagram. If it's already in there, you don't have to remove it. But I mean, you don't have to. It doesn't have any impact on the fact of what you're doing. It's just that you have a topology map. If your topology maps have network bandwidth, IP address, IPv6 strings, it's just clutter. It clutters up the diagram. If you have these large descriptors underneath each of them, it makes the network diagram very beefy and chunky. So I would try to minimize that, because you're putting it in this document. And it's going to be, they want to see it. They want to see it at a high level. So I definitely wouldn't necessarily include it because of visual look, but I would, yeah, it can be done. It could be put in there. It's just, you'll see that if you put a network diagram in with a massive amount of data in it, it's like IP addresses and bandwidth and all that. It's just going to clutter it up, but definitely you can do it if you want. This recording will be made available, yeah, to everyone. Again, the templates are going to be available through Lionfish. They can give you this template, but you can also, go on Google and search for it. You're going to run into the fact that anybody who wants to give you their SSP template is going to want you to sign up for their newsletter and all that other stuff. But yeah, you can have this document. You can get this easily from Lionfish. You just email them and they'll send it to you. All right, that's it for the chat message. Anybody else has any questions or chat messages or anything else that they want to ask? All right, so again, It's a
There's another question in the chat.
oh, all right. Okay. Is it better to attach user lists and network diagrams? Yeah, you could do that. Like if you're for large diagrams, for large lists, absolutely. Mark it as an appendix and just include a document attached to it. No one's gonna or no one's going to say no. It doesn't necessarily need to be embedded in this document. Um, I, lots of companies, like especially smaller ones with home networks, their topology is so simple that you could just drop it in here. If your topology is multi-site, multi-network, absolutely create an appendix item and put the lists of users and access levels and even your inventory. If your inventory is going to be multiple pages, hundreds of items, I would definitely try to keep this document as chewable as possible, and put it as an appendix item or an attachment. Yeah, sure, that's totally acceptable. No one's gonna say no to that. Anything? All right, so again, the SSP, what is it? It's a brief description of how you've met your controls. If you can't meet the control, you still want to make the effort to describe how you would meet the control if you had to meet it. That way you have a if you have a policy that says in the event that I need to do this particular thing, in the event that I have multiple locations, here is our policy that works towards that goal, and that will allow you to meet the control. So uh, I know a lot of people who fill out their SSP, they don't fill out the sections that don't apply to them, and then they fail. They fail to get the contract. They fail to meet the minimum amount of requirements. All they really needed to do is put in the fact that this is how they, if they had a VoIP network, this is how it would be dealt, handled. Here's their policy. Here's their VoIP policy. That kind of thing. That's going to meet the control, even if you don't have it. So definitely take the effort to go ahead and meet all the controls with policies. Um, you're not going to have great evidence for those particular controls, so you're going to want to make sure that if you do whatever, your evidence is going to be your policy. Is the SSP template specifically designed to meet the NIST standards, or can we apply it to other data protection policies across the world? It is not specifically designed for well, it's a byproduct of the NIST standard. So it meets all of the NIST requirements. But if you want to use this type of methodology to meet HIPAA or to meet PCI or GDPR or any of the other ones, absolutely, this is a great way of doing it. Having the process code for ISO, you can put in all that, and this SSP type of scenario is perfect for what will happen is that you will go to do business with a company like Boeing, and they'll send you something similar to this for your CMMC or your NIST or your ISO. They're going to send you this kind of document. It might be this exact document that they'll send you and say, please fill this out. And so if you already have this type of methodology built into how you do business, it's going to take a lot less time. Like I said, 27 to 28 hours is required to fill this all out. There's 110 controls. You have to go to each of your controls. You have to look at how you implement it, and then you have to briefly describe it. So it's going to take 15 to 20 minutes per control to do that. If you multiply that out by 110, it's going to be a lot of hours. So definitely, if you use this methodology to create a different, to create your a method of creating, how you do your controls, it's going to be super helpful. And yes, I've seen like ISO, for instance, I've seen this type of a questionnaire come back for an ISO audit. And if you already have your NIST and or your CMMC SSP, you can turn around and easily use it as well. All right. And so again, this recorded video should help you. This SSP template should help you. You can also get a POAM template, but how to fill it out. We've gone over every single field and every step. Again, let me tell you that Lionfish is critical here. This type of application is critical because if you have to keep track of all these different controls and all of these different, you're going to have to do that in some sort of a portal or platform. Or, I mean, I've in the early days before Lionfish, I had to use an Excel spreadsheet. And let me tell you, it took hours and hours of poring over that Excel spreadsheet because I would have to go and find the particular control and look at it, and then I'd have to have task sections, who was working on it, what they were doing, if it had a POAM entry. If you have all that in an Excel spreadsheet, and then I'd also have to have links in it, and which was a nightmare, to all my evidence. So all of my artifacts and evidence and policies and procedures, I had to have ready access to that, just to look at it, to be able to understand what I was doing and to be able to even describe it in here. So it's unbelievable that I did it with an Excel spreadsheet, but I did. And trying to go back and using an Excel spreadsheet or a SharePoint site without this type of a product is just, it's going to be brutal, because you have to keep track of who's responsible, when you implement it, when you're going to look at it again, who signed off on it, who worked on it, what artifacts you have available for it, what evidence you have available for it, what policies and procedures, what the number is. And then the best part about Lionfish is if you get another set of controls, like they want you to do PCI or ISO, they've made it so that you can see which controls you have that already meet those other controls. There's a list of controls that say, okay, 3.13.12 is also ISO 1IF-1.16. So you know you can already fill that one with this particular control that you've filled out. So if I were you and you needed to track CMMC and ISO or NIST or any of the other frameworks that are supported, I would use a platform like Lionfish. I mean, it's pretty crazy to try to control it yourself. I've done it before. It's a brutal time suck. This will shave tons of hours of time off of your information. When assessing your client's system hardware and software, do you meet with them to go over each item in the inventory and make notes on what they tell you verbally, or do you prefer to take a look at the system hardware yourself and look under the hood, so to speak, or is it a combo? Both. Yeah, I do both. So I will do an inventory, I will scan their network, and then I'll go over the information with them in a meeting. I will send them their inventory scan that I did. I will send them all of the software that they're using. Absolutely. And so definitely do a physical inventory yourself and then go over the inventory with the customer. Don't really take their word for it. I definitely wouldn't do that. I would want to do my own discovery of what's going on in that particular environment. Absolutely. Yes. So it's saying, do you have to answer every control? Yeah, the answer is yes. You need to answer every single control. The easiest way to do that is to just create a policy or a process, like that says, like, let's say, for instance, everybody's going to have a password policy. But say that was one of the controls you didn't meet, and you were like, well, they're going to go, what's your password policy? Make one. Make a password policy and then add it in and make it your evidence. And once you have that password policy, you've met that control. That control is checked off. And then you can just say, describe how this control is implemented. We have a password policy. We require all of our staff to follow that password policy. And so therefore you have it. If you don't have the particular control, make a policy, make your own policy, even if it's just hypothetical. I know a lot of some of the controls are moving data around physically, or having a physical filing cabinet. Do you have a filing cabinet? No, I don't have a filing cabinet, but here is how I store secure data. And you can even include that policy in your security policy, so that you just attach your security policy to this instead of having hundreds of little baby policies, right? You might not want to have a policy, an individual policy for every single one of your controls. You might just have a security policy, and in that you might have a section called section password policy section, and then you would just refer to it here. You would say, I have met this control. It is under the password policy section of my security policy document, and then that's good enough. Okay, regarding Rick's questions about answering each control, even if your client doesn't use it or need it, the client is completely adamant that that they will never use that. Just create something industry standard. You're absolutely correct. They may never need a filing cabinet. They may never need to securely store the CUI or the control data. All you need to do in your security policy is say, in the event that we get a document, we would secure it in a secure filing cabinet that was locked and had access. It was in a room that only people in this group would have access to. Yes, you just want to create something that meets the control. So you definitely, absolutely need to create a some sort of a document that says this is how we would deal with this in the event that it occurred. It's like a disaster. You're not saying that the flood is coming through your house right now. You're just saying, look, if a flood does occur, here's how we will respond to it. Here, we will move facilities, we will relocate staff, that kind of thing. So it's just in league with that. It's like, look at it from the perspective of a disaster recovery plan. You actually aren't experiencing disasters every day, but you do have a plan for what you would do in the event that a disaster did occur. So then absolutely you would have a disaster recovery policy, and then that would meet the requirement. Do you have a disaster recovery plan? You say, yes, I do. Here it is. Even though maybe an act of God like lightning striking your building might never happen, at least you have a plan of action written out as to what you would do, and then that would again meet the controls. So yeah, don't feel like you have to ignore a control because you aren't going to do it. Yeah. All right. That's it. Unless anybody has any other questions, that's it for today. Anybody else? No? Okay, here we go. Jared, you mentioned budgeting around 28 full hours of time to complete not the inventory. I would say 28 hours of full time to complete this document. So inventory, if you have like an RMM tool, remote monitoring management, or something like Spiceworks, you can use that to scan your network, or maintain a scan, or you could have like a different scanning technology that allows you to look at of the network. That's going to take a certain amount of time. It's not 28 hours. It takes 28 hours of time to fill in this document, this SSP document. So that's what you want to budget for this particular document only. Because again, you have to describe 110 controls one at a time. You have to look up the information. You have to type in a control and describe it adequately enough, 3 to 4 sentences for each control. It will take days to fill this out. Yeah. So again, someone's also saying that yes, it's a time suck. It is. Filling this out is not something trivial. It's not something you're doing in an afternoon. You definitely need to budget like 3 days of time to fill this thing out, because again, you're going to have to look at every single control you have and make sure that you describe how you're going to meet it. Yeah, it's an undertaking. It's definitely not something that is trivial, or that, oh, I'll get to this afternoon. No, it's not like that at all. It's more of a 3-day long endeavor. It's in a Word document. A person is asking, is it in a Word document? Again, Lionfish can give this document to you, and just reach out to us and with an email after this meeting, and we can get you the document, and yeah, you can have the template, sure. But again, like I said, it's available if you look hard enough, if you fill out enough newsletter things, someone will send you this document. But yeah, absolutely, we'll include this document back to you so everyone can have it. Anything else? Any other questions? We'll wait for a little bit. All right. Okay, cool. Everybody, thanks for coming. There doesn't seem to be any more questions. We'll have more of these sessions in the future. I hope you liked it. I hope you appreciate it. We will have it, the tape, the recording of it available so you can listen to me over and over again and understand it. But again, reach out to us and we'll send